Yo, what is up guys? Welcome to the third review video. Before we get into any of the positives, the negative feedback on this film I'm about to talk, wanted to let you know, this film is done by the guy who gave us the biggest, most influential horror film probably to come out of the 21st century, that film being The Descent, done by Neil Marshall. Before there was probably this incredible film, The Descent, done by Neil Marshall, there was 3 years before that the film known as Dog Soldiers, a film where we don't really get something as masterful as what The Descent brought, but we get something very enjoyable, kind of guilty pleasure in some areas, but it's a hell of a fun film. You've got a band of British soldiers, 6 to be specific, doing battle with all these werewolves, about probably 3-4 in total for what it looks to be, and it is awesome stuff, people. It is awesome stuff to see just these soldiers taking on these werewolves throughout the film, just shouting their heads off, and yeah, this is the kind of stuff I'm going to obviously get into on my positives, but no doubt, but yeah, it's got a lot of good material to it, and yeah, there's some good history of just how obviously the same director who gave us The Descent obviously did this film, and there's similarities to it of how it's very like Scottish and stuff, this kind of film, as well as The Descent. But yeah, anyway people, let's get into this review, starting straight off with the positives. There is a great cast in here. We've got a great cast for both the 6 soldiers. The casting for our 6 soldiers here is very well done. You have Sean Pertwee as our lead, Sergeant Harry Wells. You've got Kevin McKidd as Cooper, Darren Morfitt as Witherspoon. You have others like Terry, Bruce and Joe. Those are our 6 lead soldiers throughout this film. And you have other characters like Emma Cleesby as this woman called Megan. She's a bit mysterious throughout the film, but I'll get into that in a bit. I'll get into more detail on that in a bit. You have Game of Thrones star Liam Cunningham as our main antagonist, followed by those werewolves. And you have a really good direction. You have a very simple storyline to bring leverage to this film, where it's just soldiers on a mission, as it seems, like a little exercise around the woods and in Scotland, and they obviously just stumble upon these werewolves along the way, and that obviously leads them to go into all this isolation in this house later in the film. But obviously, you know, they learn things about how there's obviously missing people throughout the film. There's cases of missing people around these same woodlands. In fact, about the missing people, there was actually someone in the first scene of this film who was actually in that Descent film as well. The guy who, in the first scene, Craig Conway, he actually did one of those crawlers in The Descent after this film, Dog Soldiers. Just wanting to say. And yeah, you just have a lot of great moments from these characters, mainly the soldiers and probably Liam Cunningham, even though he's supposed to be the villain that we're supposed to hate. But even Liam Cunningham is fantastic here, being the villain we're supposed to hate throughout the film. You have Sean Pertwee, who for me is definitely this movie's standout character. He has the most funny lines, the most strong dialogue, as well as funny and sometimes serious, and he probably has the most inspirational moments in the whole film. Like, there's a part where he's giving off a story about stuff he went through when he was like in the army with an old buddy of his called Eddie Oswald, and obviously he lost him to a landmine or something, and he obviously explains just how obviously he's committed to, you know, paying commitment to everything he does for his band of soldiers. Like, obviously Pertwee's obviously, all I'm saying people is that Pertwee really just does the most in this film, really committing to the role. He's really invested in the role, and he really gives off the most committed moments in the film, especially a part where, you know, he blows himself up with the werewolves at one point. But Yeah, I love Sean Pertwee. Sean Pertwee is just... He is just... Love the guy so much, and he's an absolute legend. I've met him myself at one of the Comic Cons down in London at one point, back in like 2018, and he's a really good guy. He's really chill, he's understanding, and yeah, he has complete confidence in both real life and in the role he's got here as Sergeant Wells. And yeah, I also wanted to say that this is one of very few films that, like I said, where it's really badass with a band of British soldiers taking on werewolves. This isn't going to be one. This isn't one of those horror flicks or suspense films where you've got CG wolves taking on a bunch of people. You know, it's not CG werewolves. This film definitely puts in the effort to actually convince us that these are real werewolves. You've actually got people in werewolf suits, animatronics and all, just doing this and that, running through like flash grenades and stuff indoors and out. And it's got a good concept of exploring just how soldiers are really in for a lot of shit when they're stuck, isolated in this quiet house in the middle of nowhere in the woodlands of Scotland, and they're obviously just trying to fend themselves from these werewolves who are trying to just rip them to pieces one by one. Like, these werewolves do not fuck about. They literally tear people apart when they get their hands on them. There's some excellent gory scenes from the like part where they kill Terry, they kill Joe, even Spoon. You know, they literally tear these guys up piece by piece and do not leave anything of them except probably just their guts and their brains all over the floor. It's gruesome stuff, but it is excellent, and it only draws you in more when you see werewolves that actually stand out with all these suits and these animatronics to them. And talking about all of this stuff about the werewolves, it's actually got someone who you may know was involved with the Hellraiser series. You've got Bob Keane and Christopher Figg, who were both filmmakers. They were both involved with the crew that made the earlier Hellraiser films. Like, Bob Keane is the one doing all the animatronic makeup design work on the werewolves here, and Christopher Figg is like the producer of the film. But two people who were involved with some of the earlier Hellraiser films were involved with doing this film with Neil Marshall, and they smashed it. They really put together great work on these werewolves throughout this film. And yeah, you have a lot of good mystery. You learn a few things about the werewolves as the movie goes along, and there is some hilarious dialogue in the film as well as the gore that follows itself. Like, you've got all these sort of lines like, "Alright, you bastards, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough," or "Sarge," or "You sick fucking bastard," or just all those kind of things like, "Oh, this shit is so fucking bone, Sarge. I hate this. We'll fucking have him. Let's get him down."
This is so fucking bone.
Anything else?
Yeah. What does bone mean?
Bone. Bollocks. Naff. Not very good.
Ryan, you tried licking your own balls yet?
I'm gonna fucking have you!
You just got all that kind of Scottish accent and all that funny dialogue from these soldiers, and it just really keeps the movie going, and you're just absolutely laughing your ass off while you're also just enjoying what you're seeing with werewolves chasing down soldiers, ripping them up from the limbs and everything. This is another movie that has an excellent soundtrack from its composer, Mark Thomas. It's got a really good soundtrack, very much suits that kind of soldier, British soldier, Royal Air Force aesthetic. Like, that's what, you know, really stands out in the film. That's what really blends in well with this kind of film. You've really got a great soundtrack that works well with this kind of soldier suspense film.
Lighted!
Sarge!
So yeah, people, as it stands, this is just, again, it's an awesome movie. Maybe a little bit underrated by some, but it is a badass werewolf film. It's one of the most badass werewolf films you'll ever watch if you haven't seen it before, if you ever, you know, just have watched it but you haven't watched it in a while. This film, fantastic, and fantastic choreography, fantastic acting from a great cast of characters from Neil Marshall's direction, and the characters here give it a lot of good leverage. It's a good storyline of a band of British soldiers against werewolves. You know, how can you not love shit like that? It's hard to not love that. You really do get some badass deaths from, like, the characters here, Witherspoon and Wells. Like Darren Morfitt's character Witherspoon, he does not go down without a fight. He literally takes to it with fist fighting a werewolf in the kitchen before they take him out. He even kicks out one of its tooth, this werewolf that he's fist fighting, and then obviously they take him out. But I like that Darren Morfitt's character Witherspoon did not go out like a bitch or anything, and same for Sean Pertwee. He obviously, you know, as I said, he's committed to the role pretty much. Like, this is definitely the kind of project he's always wanted to do. He's that committed, Sean Pertwee, in this film, and obviously he went out in a really badass way. Like, obviously, because these werewolves, one of them scratched and turned him into a werewolf in the process, he's about to wolf out at one point in the near end of the film, and doing so, he obviously traps himself in the kitchen and gets, like, the gas on and lights the whole place up, and the whole thing just blows up and destroys, literally, like, disintegrates him and the werewolves all in the process, and it is awesome. Definitely some of the best and most committed acting I've seen from Sean Pertwee in any project of his. And yeah, it's a badass death scene from Sergeant Wells. And so anyway, yeah, that's pretty much most of the positives, people. So, going on with the mixed. So there was this character that Sean Pertwee at one point was talking about in the film, his old war buddy called Eddie Oswald, and the kind of stuff he said about him, maybe there could have been some flashback kind of things on just like what he was like, the actor who done him, we could have maybe known more about if there was more scenes on him, because all we got from him was just a bit of a story around the campfire at one point earlier in the film, and then a photo of him before Sean Pertwee's character blows himself up with the werewolves. We don't really get much on that character that Pertwee talks about in the film, Eddie Oswald, his old buddy from the army long ago. And even the same thing kind of goes with Emma Cleeseby's character here, Megan. She's kind of the character who is mysterious, and that's a good thing. You know, she's a zoologist, she came to be one with nature, and obviously she's tied to this family, this trio of werewolves, and obviously thus being part of that family of werewolves who live in the same house that the soldiers are isolating in. She's obviously a werewolf herself. But maybe there could have been a bit more exploration of like what her life was like as a kid or something before she actually became a werewolf like the rest of her family, because obviously her family are the werewolves that are going after people in the woodlands and even these soldiers now around the house. But it's just maybe something they could have done to maybe give a bit more leverage to maybe those subplots in the film on Pertwee's old war buddy Eddie Oswald, and maybe we could have gotten a bit more on Megan, but it doesn't matter all the world. It's just something they maybe could have done slightly stronger with. Maybe it could have been executed a little stronger with some of those subplots being explored a bit more with some background, but it was fine without it, I guess. But it's just maybe something that could have, you know, had us understand their character background a bit more, that's all. So, lastly, with the negatives, I will definitely just address the obvious and say that our villain here, Liam Cunningham, complete arsehole. The kind of villain who just wants trouble, wants to set people off for no reason. Like, there's a part where he, like, shoots a dog straight in the head just because he's obviously trying to test our other character, our main character, Kevin McKidd's character known as Cooper, just so that he can obviously be a part of his special ops team. And then he's even just saying things like,
"It's just a dog, that's all."
Chasing that first kiss, are we, Cooper? So why worry, Cooper? You may not live that long.
Shut your mouth.
Decisions.
Laugh. I nearly died.
Who's stopping you?
We'll fucking have him! Take it easy, big man. Calm down.
Cunningham's the kind of villain who just obviously has a lot of cunning. Like, literally, it's in his name. He's literally cunning and manipulative, and he's calm. He seems careless about anyone who lives or dies, even his own team members. So it's just a film of really good ideas. It's something that's not really done much in werewolf films that often. Isolation and survival. It's done well in this film, and the concept is so fun. And so, yeah, overall, people, that's it. That's Dog Soldiers, and this is totally worth seeing if you haven't seen it before. This is one of the most badass horror films you will ever see. So I definitely recommend you check this out, because you will not be disappointed by the suspense, the friendship between these characters, these soldiers, throughout the film. There's so much fun to be had, and it's the perfect kind of film to watch around like Halloween, as it is pretty much at this time now. So definitely check this out, and be sure to look out for more on the channel. Cheers. Now, get the fuck out of here, soldier.